Audio's rolling.
Can one of you guys clap for me?
Okay.
All
Awesome.
right. So, Liz, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am not a Cincinnati native. I'm originally from Plain City, Ohio, which is a really small farm town outside of Columbus, and I'm a music therapist. So I do music all day, every day, with a lot of different people all over Cincinnati. And I've also been a Christian since I was young. I was raised in the church. That's just about it. That's me.
Awesome.
What about you? Who are you?
I'm Heidi, and I'm also from a tiny farm town, and have been a Christian all my life, going to church all my life. So pretty similar as you. I'm on core team for young adults, and used to lead a skate pod with you guys, and that's how Liz and I met. Actually, almost 2 years ago now, because
It was Physical Local.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, then became super close friends, and the rest is history. So,
Yeah. I remember our mutual friend was like, "Oh, I invited this Heidi girl. I hope that's okay. That like she seems pretty cool." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then from then on, we were like inseparable, doing all the things.
Yeah, because we we're pretty much together. Yeah, every single
Literally.
day that summer.
Yeah. It was a little much. Good stuff.
Yeah. So now tell us about your role in young adults.
Yeah, so I actually lead a skate pod now. So when you moved to core team, I ended up taking your spot, which was a total God thing because I had never wanted to be a pod leader and was actually like, no. And then you came in all excited that night and God was like, you need to do this now. And I was like, no, really, I don't. And he's like, yeah, you do. Like before she leaves, you need to do this. So I said yes, and now get to hang out and get to hang out and do pod stuff, which is fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are talking about worship. Why don't you kind of explain? I know Austin kind of talked a little bit about this, which is really cool because kind of what he talked about was a lot of stuff you mentioned to me when we first talked about this. So why don't you tell us kind of what you think of worship?
Yeah, so kind of like I said, as a music therapist, music's really near and dear to my heart. I was that child that when I was growing up, I sang when I was 3 years old in the doctor's office for all the nurses.
Not surprised.
Yep, I had the loudest voice in church, that little girl in Prancer singing as loud as she can, off key. That was me. So music's always been super dear to my heart, but I don't think worship is just music. I call worship that traditional worship, meaning that you're in a space with a group of people and you're using some form of art expression to give praise and honor to God. So that's through song, through dance, through art making, and it's usually in a communal space. But I think also there is a type of worship that happens every single day, and every single action that you do, every single relationship, every single conversation, your work projects, the habits that you have, all are forms of worship. And it's really just where we take our intention before we go into those things that make it acts of worship.
Like that choice that Austin talked about, you have to make a choice to be kind of in not worship mode, but have your heart in the right posture. And
yeah. So if you're going to the gym and you're just going to go work out, then great, but I don't think that's necessarily worship. But if you're going in being like, all right, I'm honoring my body right now and giving it the nourishment that it needs so that I'm ready to be prepared to go out and do what it needs to do, or I'm going to be there to then interact with the people at the gym, even if it's just smiling at people, that can be a form of worship. It depends on how your intention's set with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this before, you have a really cool concept kind of around worship, and I know I've used this kind of as a little mantra too. So why don't you explain kind of your worship concept and where that came from?
Yeah. So I have a really, really close friend that came up with these 3 steps to worship and to approaching scenarios in life. And she originally came up with it in regards to finances and how she was approaching her finances.
What it was about.
Yeah, it's super cool. And kind of the fear of being able to give up to God what's God's and to trust going forward that it'll be okay. So, and she shared it with me and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. But then, yeah, it's amazing. But I'm not just going to apply it to finances. I'm going to apply it to my entire life because that's who I am as a person. So the 3 steps are show up, listen, and obey. So again, like show up, listen, and obey. So show up means that you're there, you're where your feet are at. It's the whole like be where your feet are. So you're not, if you are in a traditional worship setting, you're not thinking about what you're having for lunch later. If you are in a meeting, you're not thinking about what your next 10 to 20 steps are. When you're in a conversation with someone, you're not thinking, oh my gosh, I want to get out of this conversation. I'm so done. I can't deal with you. Like all of that stuff. So you're showing up, you're there. You are present in the moment. And oftentimes that's where we frame our, intention, right? So what your like focus is. And then listen is obviously when you're in that moment, when you're talking with somebody or you're actively singing or giving praise to God, or you are actively doing the task that He set out for you. You're in that moment and it's that give and take of listening of what you're supposed to do. So maybe it is just listening. Sometimes in our relationships with people, all we want to do is listen to then speak, and we often need to listen. So there's that aspect, and then there's obey. And so obey is listening and then responding to what you were saying, what you were called to do in that moment. And then it repeats, because then once you obey, then you need to show up to whatever you're being called to do. So if you're called to if you're worshiping and you're called to go to kids club, then you need to then show up to kids club to volunteer. If you're called in the moment to then sign up for a Go Trip, then you need to show up to the Go Trip meeting or to sign up. So like it's circular, and then you're like there, then you're listening and obeying, and it just keeps going. So that's kind of like how I think of it and break it down in my life.
Yeah, I love that, because there are a lot of times when the obey part we're like, no, I don't want to do that.
I'd rather not.
And,
like, please no.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like the obey is just show up and like do the thing, and but I've loved like applying that to life and kind of what God is teaching me and telling me. So I love like you applying that to worship too. Yeah. So I think we kind of touched on this already, but has it always been easy to do the show up, listen, and obey?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. I think, in my notes I said, hell no, it's not been easy. No. So a really poignant moment in my life in the last year or so where it's not been easy to show up was I went to a worship night at Uptown, Crossroads Uptown, and it was in February, and my dad, about a week before then, had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and my brother was leaving to go to New Zealand for 6 months, and my world just was imploding, and it wasn't fun. And I was in a space of what's going on, where's my life at right now? It's just a really confused space. And then I walked into Crossroads Uptown, and you had actually texted me that your dad had collapsed from a heart attack, and we were really close. And so for that to happen to your dad with my dad was just heart-wrenching. And I walked in, and I love the Crossroads Uptown leaders, but the people that were leading that worship night had only selected songs that were all about, oh, God is wonderful, and look how mighty he is, and He commands the stars, and look, if when He asks the mountains to move, He'll move. And like in my head, I was just like, I don't want to listen to this. Right. Like, this is not where the space is. Like, I want my heart's right now crying out to God, saying, I need you and I need help. And this is not where I need to be. This is not what I need to hear. And so it was hard. It was really hard to be in that space and not leave. And then that kind of started in my own life, a whole year-long struggle to show up to even the most basic things. whether it was hard to get off the couch at times. There were times when I chose to stay at home instead of coming to young adults because I just couldn't do the energy, and like it was hard to hear everybody else going forward when I couldn't. Stuck and just overwhelmed, and with work and everything. I work a lot with preschool students and folks with special needs and things, and I sing every day, and so I'm serving so much with my body and my voice, and to show up and to care for them and have it felt like nobody showing up to care for me was hard. And so the show up kind of shifted for me, the worship kind of shifted for me into the most minute small tasks. So whether it's showing up for me might be texting a friend that was having a difficult time, or making a plan one-on-one with somebody, or show up might be to still get out of bed and go to work, and still choose to go out with my pod, even though it was really, really difficult at times.
Lots of energy.
Yeah. So show up, I think, just shifted, and the worship shifted. I think that still was worship, because it was, my intention was still to keep doing life and to keep pushing, even though I was in a space of being super confused. It was still I was still searching out for God in those moments, and even in my work, in my quiet time, I still wanted to show up. I didn't want to, but then my journal entries definitely shifted the themes. But I know you're part of that story. So what about you with the showing up?
So on my side of it, about this time last year, pretty much up until woman camp, was a lot of I think I've told you, since one of the weeks of prayer and fasting, I've done the prayer time in my car on the way to work. And so pretty much every day after my dad died was what the F is happening? I freaking hate you. Pretty much just cussing God out the whole way to work. And I guess that was my show up. And kind of got to a point where I had this vision of myself I think I might have shared this at Young Adults one night, in a boxing ring, exhausted, breathing really heavy, and I had been punching, beating on God, and kind of felt he was are you done? We have work to do. And
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was kind of where I was, just that kind of showing up to that quiet time, that prayer time with him. But I kind of saw it as you know what, this is kind of like a human relationship or a marriage. You might hate each other for a while, but you keep fighting because the relationship is important. And I'm so pissed at you right now, but I'm still talking to you, and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm hanging on. And so I think that was the big thing for me, just a lot of anger, and kind of let go of a lot of that at women camp last year. And I think that's when things kind of turned around for me. I had another really specific moment. So to kind of give a little context to this, my brother battled osteosarcoma for a couple of years before he passed away. And while he was sick, my mom made us every day write something we were thankful for in a gratitude journal that we had as a family. And we whined about it every time she made us fill it in. But now on the other side of that, and as I've grown up and matured, I've done that on my own, and seen a huge change in my attitude and just my heart. And I kind of realized it after Austin talked on Wednesday, I was shifting kind of more into worship mode instead of whining mode. And anyway, there was this song that came on shortly after my dad died. I remember I was driving to Kenwood Mall or something, and it was called Counting Every Blessing.
I love that song. It's in my head all the time. I
just started sobbing in the car, but I was I'm counting every blessing. I'm counting every blessing. I have so many things to be thankful for. And just doing that really helped me a lot, shift my perspective from that angry whining and more to a thankful, worshipful heart. So that's kind of where I was. So was there a point where you felt it finally got easier to show up, and then you were back more into that show up, listen, obey cycle?
I think it was the change of the year, really. Okay. I think it was the season. It was a really rough year. 2018 was a really, all the way till November, year I've ever been through in my life.
Yeah.
Just relationally, there was also a lot of health things later on. So it wasn't just those like first 3 things.
Right.
It was a lot of other stuff. So I think the change of the year helped lighten it, and I think it was just the change of being like, you know what, this is gonna continue to be my reality, and I know that this is gonna, like, rough times are still gonna be ahead, but I still want to live the life of joy and that I can right now while things have eased just a little bit. I think is the only big thing.
Yeah, because I've like kind of seen that shift, and I didn't know if there was like a specific thing that
I don't know. God, I think it was God. There's no other other
there usually is
reason. It's cool. I think also there's been some healthier, I do think that's just God, but there's been some healthier moments of when I'm in conversations. I give a lot for work and I talk a lot, and I recently learned a phrase, that's the less of me, more of you. And so I get really burnt out by being around people because I'm constantly talking with people about their problems and like pouring out all of my energy and all of myself, because of just the nature of what I do. And so now every time I go into a session or I feel drained or not in a space where I can worship and set that intention and show up authentically in a form of worship, I do try and pray the prayer of, less of me, more of you. Like, this is let you be in there and not me. And that's really, really helped shift focus for me to just be like, okay, it's not my burden. It's not on me.
Right.
This is like, I don't have the strength, because you get down to the point of like, I don't have the strength. No. I really don't. I'm done. I've hit like, here's my like ceiling threshold, and I'm like way, we are way outside of it. Yeah, what I can handle is just like blown out of proportion. Yeah, blown to smithereens. And so being able to just give that to God and just be like, listen, I don't have the voice and I don't have the energy to see this 4th preschool and these kids have like need this joy right now that this is. So like, God, you got to do it. Or like the teen girls that I see that are going through some really awful things and they just are yearning for that connection. And it's like, God, I can't. Just let me like show your love through me, but let it be you and not me, because I don't have any more love to give right now. Right. So it's you, like, let them feel their love.
I really like that kind of approach. I feel like that's another good like attitude shifter too. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. So do you have any advice for someone else who might be going through a hard time right now, like where we were this time last year?
I mean, I'd just focus on showing up, and not showing up. So if you're someone that right now is having anxiety going to young adults, or having anxiety going somewhere, or not even anxiety, but like maybe you're at work and you can't do this project, something's standing in your way or something like that, like break that up into those minute little tasks and like walk yourself through those like tiny things of showing up. So if it's too big, and forget about listen and obey. I think so many times we all want to be like, okay, I'm going to be in worship, I'm gonna have this huge mountaintop experience and this is what I'm gonna do. And it's no, like if you don't, then you're gonna feel like a failure after. And you're not like, that's not what you're gonna stop yourself before you even start. So break it down to those small things. Also be in community with other people. Like,
oh golly, like,
I couldn't go. No, there was the amount of time, the amount of impact being around people made. And like, you're not an island too, so like if you're going through something really shitty, like don't keep it in. I think the best advice you gave me was like, no, you need to tell some people at work what's going on.
Then you're like in your own little, and no one knows what's going on.
And it's like boiling over. It's like a little kettle that's about to explode. Like, you need community, and that's what young adults is for too. Like be here, like be around people, like you need that. I don't care if you're an introvert or an extrovert, whatever you label yourself as. I don't care, like, if you're burnt out, like, you need people around you. And so if you're going through a rough time, don't let the lies are from the devil when he says, like, oh, you don't need people. Oh, you're better off on the couch. Oh, you're better off things. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yes, and I think we've said that before, like, oh, like, I'm feeling that, like, pull, like, I'm kind of trying to isolate, like, I need to get out and be with people and talk to someone, and yeah, so definitely do not listen to that lie.
Yeah, because it's absolutely a lie.
It's just going to be worse.
Yeah, what about you? Because I'm sure you have advice, too, for walking through that.
I would say keep talking to God, like, even if you're cussing him out, like, if you have a relationship with him, just be like, hey, I hate you right now, but I'm still talking. Like, that was the biggest thing for me, that I was just like, you're not getting rid of me. Like, I'm clinging and I'm talking to you and I'm really mad at you, but I'm still going to keep this relationship going. I think that'd be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, that reminds me, I wanted to say the Colossians, like, 3:2, which is, like, set your mind on things above and not on earthly things. Yeah. And, like, it's so easy to just be embroiled in your hard times and your small little thing that's going on. And, like, don't feel guilty about that, but definitely the setting your mind on things above, that this is not all of us. Even if the peace and the love that God promises us, sometimes that promise doesn't mean that it won't happen even till heaven. And so, like, to know that, like, that's coming, even if it's, like, way down, like, to still set your mind
right,
up above.
This is like a little blip in all of eternity.
Yeah, a tiny little, like, grass is what, like, Proverbs says, isn't it?
Like one day we're gonna be like, that was
doesn't matter. You had, like, patting on your head, like, oh, you didn't even know. You're fine. Let's do this. Come on. It's like God, the boxing ring, and he's like, all right, you done?
Yeah, because it was very much like I don't know if I want to say sassy in that moment, but he was like, are you done now? Like, throwing a temper tantrum, like, come on, we've got stuff to do. So,
cool.
Awesome. Do you have any final worship thoughts?
Actually, I wanted to I think we got off the topic just a little bit, but I think one of the things that's really important about worship in all of the things that we talked about, whether it's going through a hard time or just in your everyday life, even if you're walking through a season that's joyful or that you're having a lot of blessing, is that it's really about setting your intention, right? I think that's the very first step, is that every relationship that you're in is an opportunity to demonstrate God's character to somebody, or demonstrate his love or his listening. And I think it's super cool in a quiet time to be able to look at what his character is and then choose to embody that. And so, I wanted to lead us in just a little bit of contemplation, so that when we go into our our discussions with our pod, we can practice setting an intention. So I recently heard at a trauma training the other day that we think of things in three, and then when we think of if we think of three words, then because it's in a set of three, it's in your it releases dopamine in your brain, which reinforces those three things.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then if you put it on your fingers as well, if you do a physical action with it, like 1, 2, 3, then it also reinforces. So I'm thinking, let's take a beat and like I'll finger pick, and we can just set our intention for what our conversations are going to be like in the pod. So whether that's you're going to be encouraging, peace, you're gonna bring calm, whatever, maybe it's you're choosing to share something that's going on in your life, maybe you're called to in this conversation to share something, share something, obey on what you're doing. So we're gonna just take a beat and think about what our intention is for our pod conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right, ready? Alright, if you're in the student section or in a living room, we're going to take a moment to set our intention. So let's take a couple of deep breaths. Now, if you feel whatever's safe for you, you can close your eyes. You can look down toward the floor. Rest your hands gently on your lap. And space of quiet contemplation. And ask God, what are the 3 words He wants you to focus on for your pod time? Keep doing those deep belly breaths. How is your pod time going to be an act of worship? Take a couple of more deep breaths here. And I'm going to count down from 3. And then you'll open your eyes for us to finish.